All right, so we'll turn it over to you. Thank you, Lauren. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the time and space, and thanks for everybody for sharing your lunch with me today. So I'm Lauren, and just a little bit of my background. I'm a licensed therapist in Kansas and Missouri. I work for JFS, and I see individual clients there, and I do the grief and loss group there a couple of times a month. I'm a trained yoga teacher. I have my 200-hour certification, and recently got my certification in plant-based nutrition. So what does that mean? So it means that I showed a commitment to the study of the benefits of whole food plant-based diet and lifestyle. I'm not a doctor, but I currently have more nutrition training than most doctors do. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. You know, our healthcare system is really designed to treat illness and not subscribe wellness. And that's something that each one of us can take into our own hands. And plant-based lifestyle is a really easy and attainable and delicious way to do that. So I went vegetarian in December of 2019, and I currently identify as vegan, which means that there are no animal products whatsoever, not just in my diet, but really in my lifestyle. I seek to avoid them whenever possible, in my clothes, in my makeup, so on and so forth. And that's happened for me in January of 2021. But I want to make it clear that I was not born a vegan. I know that, meat and eggs and cheese and things like that taste good. And that was not why I chose this way. So I spent about 37 years of my life eating animals and their byproducts. And now I'm 40. So it's been about, 2.5, 3 years. So if you want to go ahead and switch to the next slide. Thank you, Sandra. So what piqued my interest in this whole diet and lifestyle? So for me, it kind of started as just, I noticed the physical sensations in my body. And I just really was hurting a lot. Like I was achy and I had pains in my joints and my bones, and it was really active, but it didn't really matter what I did. I started to notice that I was very disconnected from what I was eating, and that there might be a relation. And that connection came up when I started to research what foods cause inflammation. And also at the same time, my husband, who's just a few years older than me, so he was like about 40, went in for his annual checkup, and his doctor was like, you are going to need blood pressure medicine, you're going to need cholesterol medicine, and you are pre-diabetic. So at your next checkup, I am assuming that I will be giving you 1 or 3 different medications. And so, there is genetic disposition in both of our families to some of these diseases. But the more that I studied and the more that I learned, the science says that that's only about 3 to 5% of the contribution to us developing disease, and the rest is what we put in our bodies. So I began to learn about the animal agriculture industry, where 99% of animal food and byproducts came from. And we won't talk about that much today, because then we could spend a whole amount of time on it. But it's horrifying. And I spent most of my life avoiding it because I didn't want to spoil my appetite, right? So that also kind of came up for me, like being a yoga teacher and saying to people all the time, like, you need to be kind, that means to all living beings on this planet. And that, not connecting to the fact that I was eating something that once was alive and wanted to still be alive, probably was something that I had to face head on. And as a therapist, I had a lot of tools to do that. I realized there was a very big amount of processing to do to unlearn things that I had spent my whole life knowing. So I also am really concerned about the planet. I have 2 little kids, and I feel a responsibility to leave something sustainable to them. And the number one way that every single one of us can make a difference on this planet, up to 3 times a day when we sit down to our plates, is to eat plants. The number one leading cause of climate change is animal agriculture. So yeah, and I talked a little bit about the yoga teacher. So I saw things that I'd never wanted to look at, and I realized my dollar is my vote, and I don't want to pay for that. I want to vote for the world I want to live in with my dollar. So all these things kind of culminated together, and then we can move to the next slide. And so I learned about a whole foods plant-based diet, and what is that? So it consists mostly of plant-based foods. So these are things like vegetables, fruits, nuts, grains, seeds, legumes, rice, and beans. No animal source foods or artificial ingredients. When possible, I understand, that we live in the real world. And I just want to clarify, you can absolutely be a junk food vegan. There's delicious flavors of Ben and Jerry's and all kinds of processed frozen things. And in the real world, some days I don't want to cook, and those things are a necessity for family. But most of the time, my food is made from scratch, and I can recognize and identify all of the ingredients. They have one name, and that's what they are. And there's a lot of chopping going on. I thought this statistic was really staggering, that 100% of 10-year-olds who follow the standard American diet, which ironically is SAD, is the acronym, that died of unrelated causes, had fatty streaks in their arteries when autopsied, which means that one of the number one killers of people today in America is heart disease, and it's beginning to build up over time. They've seen evidence in children as young as 3. So years and years and years of eating this cholesterol and these products that they build up. And so if you want to go ahead and move on to the next slide. So whole food plant-based diet benefits include fresh whole ingredients, minimally processed foods. So this can help stimulate weight loss and improve overall health. Seeking to exclude refined foods like added sugars, white flours, processed oils. If you spend a little time researching it repeatedly, what you'll find is that eating a whole food plant-based diet turns diseases such as heart disease, cancers, diabetes, dementia on and off in the body immediately upon consumption. So this is what I was saying before. So genetically, we have a predisposition to disease that accounts for about 3 to 5%. The rest is what we eat. So eating foods that are high in cholesterol and saturated fat, which is found only in animal products, will turn these disease it'll turn it on in the body, and then you can actually prevent, reverse, and arrest diseases by switching to whole foods plant-based diet. There's repeated scientific evidence and studies out there that support that. So if you want to go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. So how can this improve your mood? Well, your food becomes you. So every cell in your body is nourished or harmed by your food choices. It fuels your mind. So eating whole foods that are high in antioxidants and vitamins and minerals, they will protect your brain from stress and free radicals. And those are the kinds of things that can impair cognition, make us feel unclear, kind of foggy. Our gastrointestinal tract, this is where we break down our food. So that produces 95% of our serotonin, which is that feel-good hormone. And this neurotransmitter stabilizes our mood. It helps us sleep, it helps with digestion, it improves other motor skills. Low serotonin in the body increases depression and anxiety and can cause problem sleeping. So if any of those things are prevalent, I think it's important to think about what we're feeding ourselves with. So, one of the things that comes up is like, we've been told our whole lives, I've been told my whole life, like, you need to drink calcium and milk. You need milk from calcium. And there is calcium in milk. That is very true. But that doesn't mean that it's bioavailable to a human digestive system, right? If you think about what milk is, dairy milk is perfect food for a baby calf that needs to grow from like 60 pounds to 600 pounds very rapidly. So they have a very different digestive tract than us. I think they have 4 stomachs actually. And this food is made for them. And, again, I don't want to get into the horror of the dairy industry. If you want to know about it, there's very, available information out there, but it relies on like just exploiting the female reproductive system of a cow over and over again. And so that is very concerning, right? So here we are told that we need this calcium from this other animal, but really its baby needs its calcium and we can't even really digest it. The countries who have the most osteoporosis are the ones who drink the most dairy and eat the most dairy. So if you look up into other sources here, you can see that it's very readily available and absorbed by the body. It's bioavailable. So we can digest and absorb these nutrients much better. The calcium from leafy greens, seaweeds and algae, the places where fish get their omegas. Chia, fig, sesame seeds, beans, soy, tofu, some fortified nut milks. So we can get calcium in different places. Always a plant. That's where the cow gets the calcium from too. So it's always just cutting out the middleman. They always say to you, like, what if you were on a deserted island with a pig? Well, I would just follow the pig around and eat what he ate, and I would be totally fine. And I'd have a great friend because pigs are smartest dogs, maybe even smarter. So iron is another thing that we're kind of told that we need to get from eating beef. It helps us bring oxygen to the brain. It provides energy to the body, but we can find iron in amazing places too. Spirulina is an algae. You can buy it like at Whole Foods or on Amazon or all kinds of places. It can come in powder form. You can add it to smoothies. It'll make them really pretty and green and blue. Pumpkin seeds or pepitas, sometimes they're called. You can sprinkle those on a salad or a smoothie bowl or a Buddha bowl. Cacao, little vegan chocolate chips, you can find those anywhere. I mean, Walmart has plant-based food these days, and Target is starting to carry their own lines. Aldi has amazing things. Trader Joe's has amazing things. And if you walk up to the people in Trader Joe's and you ask them, they will print out a list of the current vegan options available in the store for you at that moment. Leafy greens, here we see this again. So we can get the calcium and we can get the iron and we can get the omegas. We can get all this stuff from eating the same foods that are whole foods and plant-based. Beans, legumes, whole grains, raisins, omegas. This is another thing that we need. So these are anti-inflammatory. They help with joint pain. They boost our mood. Again, that's spirulina, the algae. Chia, hemp seeds, flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, walnuts, leafy greens. So it's, the medicine is in the food, right? You can just go into the next slide, please, Sandra. Thank you. Protein, where do you get your protein? This is my favorite question. I get this question all the time. And the other funny thing that I usually ask people back is, well, how much protein is in the piece of chicken or the piece of fish that you're eating? And the truth is nobody has a clue, not only how much is in the piece they're eating, or most people don't even really know how much protein they should eat in a day. And a lot of the illnesses that are common to people are actually from too much protein in the diet. You probably don't know anybody who's ever, gotten sick or died of a protein deficiency. It just doesn't happen. If you're eating whole foods and you have a well-planned and well-balanced diet, so you're representing those fruits and veggies and nuts and seeds and grains and legumes. And I always try to just make lots of rainbows in my plate, and that's a good way. Just the colors are the nutrients to think about it. Just make it more colorful when in doubt. And if you're doing that, then you're going to get all the protein that you need, because the protein comes from the plants. That's where the animals get it from too. So proteins, their amino acids make up the proteins, and they help the neurotransmitters function, which also helps us with depression, anxiety, strength, stamina. Going plant-based has not only made a big improvement for my husband and I in just our physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, every aspect of our life has improved. We work out harder, we have more strength and stamina, and we recover faster. And it's just nothing else has really changed except the fuel that we're giving ourselves. And both of us have commented that after we eat, we feel really good. And we both noticed after eliminating those products, that eating foods that are high in saturated fat and cholesterol, they tend to make you feel in your body depressed was the word. Like my body would feel depressed after I would eat. Like I would just be like, oh, I'm so full. And we'll go to restaurants now and see people get up from the table and they'll be like, oh my gosh, oh, it's not supposed to feel like that when you eat. You should be nourished. You should have energy. Most days I eat lunch and I go immediately to my yoga mat and pick up weights and start working out. So it should be like that. Fiber. Fiber is the real question we should be asking, not how much protein do you have, how much fiber do you have? You cannot find fiber in meat, dairy, or eggs, or any animal products. It's only found in plants, and we need it. It helps clean out the bacteria and the other buildup in our intestines. Feeds good bugs, the microbiome, which help create good gut health. And things like prebiotics, you can find these in asparagus, leeks. I love like krauts, are really good. Or like certain kinds of pickles are good. So those have increased bioavailability as well of certain minerals, which means that if you eat certain foods together, that helps the body increase the absorption and the nutrients of those foods. For example, a big one is like avocado and tomato. Like the fats in the avocado and the lycopene in the tomato just feed off of each other. Garlic and onions is another one. So that's why you see that paired together a lot. Stress hormones are biochemicals produced by the body in response to any form of stress. So, it's not something that I really ever thought about until I really delved into the animal agriculture industry. But due to high stress in their life and slaughter, the animals release cortisol into their tissues many times over, and it absorbs into their tissues. And that is, cortisol is like what impacts mood, and it increases the depression and the anxiety. And what we eat, we absorb. So it's just something to think about. If you take an apple off of a tree, the apple will grow back and the tree stays there. But if you eat an animal, like the animal is gone. That isn't, I think the apple is way more of a circle of life situation to think about. Okay, we'll just move on. So some takeaways here. A whole food plant-based diet is nutritionally adequate, healthy, and safe for all stages of life, including pregnancy, infancy, and aging. And it's not me that says that. That is the National Association of Dietetics. You can look that up. I thought this quote was kind of interesting. Man eats meat to be strong as an ox, but he forgets that the ox eat grass. So if you look at our digestive tracts, biologically, we are the closest in DNA to gorillas, and we have the closest digestive tract to them, and they eat a whole foods plant-based diet. Pretty much all plants, occasional insects, which I'm not interested in eating. I used to eat insects out of the sea, right? Because that's like what lobsters and other things are. And I think that's kind of, the other thing that's really come for me is, plants have protein, they have essential amino acids. If you eat a balanced, well-planned whole foods plant-based diet with an assortment of nuts and grains, seeds, legumes, rice, beans, fruits, and veggies, you can get all of the nutrients you need. And anything you don't need, you can supplement. Everybody should probably be taking a B12 supplement, whether you eat animal products or not, because even though animals do have B12 in them, it's actually really found in like the dirt. And we just are so hyper cleaning the potatoes and the things these days that we're probably not getting it. They actually found in studies that people who eat meat and people who don't eat meat both had deficiencies in B12. And then vitamin D, especially here being in a place where sometimes we don't have sunshine, if you can't get outside for those 20, 30 minutes every day. So I think, is there maybe one more slide with some other common questions that I had? I think there's maybe two more. So a lot of people talk about it being expensive, and the truth is, no, it's not. If you stick to the basics, rice and beans are really not expensive. Frozen vegetables are great. They're really easy to buy, and they're frozen at their freshest Frozen fruit is great for smoothies. Every morning we do smoothies and we just throw a handful of leafy greens and fruit and nut milk. I suggest using a soy milk or a pea milk, like a fortified nut milk is going to be like better for you. There's just calcium in it, and that's really what we're drinking milks for. But if you do buy a lot of processed foods and things that are already prepared and in a box, then you could spend a lot of money on that kind of food. But that's not really whole food plant-based, and that's that junk food vegan stuff I was talking about. Can you still eat out? Yes. So many restaurants these days are adding options to their menu. And again, your dollar is your vote. So if you want to see more of those foods when you go out, you just have to ask for them. You have to just say, this is where I want my money to be. Will your food taste good? Yes. Most of the people who choose to go to Whole Foods plant-based, they don't choose that way because they don't like the way that meat tastes, but they realize that the benefits outweigh the cost. And food, if you think about it, meat doesn't really taste good plain. You're seasoning it with plants anyways. So it's the texture and it's the plant seasonings that can make your food taste good. And you can still have that sensory pleasure that food is without, all of the other, there's no way around the fact that, eating animals is harmful and it causes suffering. And it's something that we've been taught to disassociate from. And I think that's something that we hopefully can change, because we all say we want this world to be a better place, but we have to take action, and our actions have reactions, whether we see them or not. A big thing for me was I realized I would never harm the animal to get it to my house. So if I was paying somebody else to do it for me, that's really not different. It's just, still being done on my behalf. And so it was another part of this process. And I think that's the other thing too, it's just a journey to be on. So I hope that in whatever way you find works for you and your family to begin some sort of a journey, that you can, whether it be, starting a couple meatless days a week, and just to see how you feel. I think, Sandra, on the next slide, I have some really good resources that might be, okay, sorry, it's the one after this. So just a couple, we'll go back one more and then come to this one if you can. So just a couple updates. My husband has reversed the need for all of those medications. He's gone back a couple of times and consistently and persistently had beautiful lab work. I don't have any more aches and pains. They're all gone. Both of us regularly exercise and are physically active. And I think that's also really important. So, I kind of touched on this in the beginning. The doctors aren't taught to prevent disease. They're taught to treat it once it's evident. So some of them just don't know this information, that you can, take medicine for the rest of your life and keep doing the same things, or you can try to change some things in what you eat and nourish yourself with. There's endless research that supports, again, I just want to drive it home, that a whole foods plant-based diet can arrest and reverse many of the common diseases that we see today. And it was Hippocrates that said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And I think that's a very important quote. And on the next slide, this is the one. So I have some resources here. I really, really like this app called Happy Cow. And I think I paid a couple of dollars for it, but my husband and I share it. And any restaurant that we go to, or any area that we're in, I should say, we can specify vegan, and it'll pull up a map of all the restaurants. And it'll give us tips for how to order at places. Like if you're at a Thai place, say no fish sauce and no eel sauce, things that I just never would have thought of or known about before that I've learned. The 21-day vegan app is a really good resource as well. I believe it's got food prep and planning, and it's like a step, a day-by-day process that helps you kind of make the shift. I think they say it takes 3 weeks to make a habit change. The Challenge 22 is another free vegan challenge website you can look up. Nutritionfacts.org is a great website led by Dr. Michael Greger. I'm not sure if anybody knows him, but he wrote the book How Not to Die. And he's a very big advocate of whole foods, plant-based diet. I use Pinterest, Google, Instagram, Facebook for recipes and inspiration all the time. I mean, this is something that people have been perfecting for years, and the vegan cheese in the grocery store is not what it used to be. So if you tried some like tofuti, like, 15 years ago or something, check it out and see if maybe it's better now, because I think it really has. And there's just so many different things, to try and see what you like and what you want to do. But I've noticed around town that every store I go into, if I'm looking for sour cream, it's like, here's the dairy sour cream, and then 2 inches to the right is the dairy-free sour cream, and like, here's the cheese, and then 2 inches to the right is the dairy-free cheese. So it's just a matter of looking to see what's available, what you like. There's just great stuff out there. Costco's carrying stuff. Aldi's got stuff. I think I mentioned some of these before, really everywhere. Sprouts is like the mecca, which is funny because it's so small, but has amazing vegan stuff. I also, if you want to make this kind of change, I highly recommend like looking into, some of the, business of the animal agriculture industry, and start to understand what it is that you are supporting, and if you want to do that. A couple of documentaries that I highly recommend, and these are not focused on animal agriculture, so there's nothing here that's going to scare anybody, but The Game Changers is really fascinating. You can watch it for free on Netflix. It focuses on really high performance athletes who wanted to get ahead of their competition, and all the research told them, like, you just need to be plant-based, and they did, and they've all like excelled in their sports. And it's just a really fascinating movie. There's a little bit of science behind it. There's some really neat experiments where they like feed people a meal and take their blood before and after, and you can see how the food affects you like instantly. It's really fascinating. The Game Changers. And then What the Health is another one that I recommend watching. Those are both free. And just another thing here, that's it's kind of become more of an animal activist thing for me too. I'm sure you can tell by the way I talk, but if we could live happy and healthy lives without harming others, why wouldn't we? So what I really took away is everything that we need, we can get from a plant. So we can just do that. So I just, again, I thank everybody for your time. I don't want to just like, I want to open it up if anybody has questions or wants to, ask me anything or just any feedback.
Yeah, if you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can throw it in the chat. It looks like we have one question in the chat that says, as for nutritional value, let's see how the frozen plant compares to fresh one.
Yeah.
Also cooked vegetable, canned vegetable, and fresh. So what's the difference?
So I think that's a really good question. It sounds like what you're saying is there a difference between buying it frozen or buying it fresh? And the answer is no, because they're going to freeze it when it's freshest. And so it's really just kind of preserved for you right there. So buying frozen vegetables is probably the best bet, and it's going to be the most economical way. Cooked vegetable, canned, fresh. So canned vegetables, if you can make sure there's no BPA in the cans, that can be, a hazard to your health. But like, does cooking a vegetable change the nutrient? Is that what you're asking? I think that's what you're asking. And I don't think that it does. I think you still get the value from the vegetable, whether you're eating it, fresh or you're cooking it. I mean, it can be more, on your digestive system to eat so many raw vegetables, but it doesn't change the composition of the nutrients, if that's what you mean.
Any other questions? Feel free to unmute. Is anybody currently eating a plant-based diet that's on this call, and what successes have you had with it?
I see a question here about almond milk. So my thought about almond milk is it depends really what you're using the milk for. If you're using milk for calcium, you're going to be much better off using soy milk that's fortified and has the calcium in it, or pea milk, but not anything with added sweeteners. Like, so sometimes you see like the chocolate with the sugar and stuff. So just the plain, if you want sweetener, add fruit, add, you can put like a date, or like a little bit of maple syrup. I never knew until I went vegan that honey was not vegan, but honey comes from bees. And so the real thing is like basically that animals like exist on this planet for their own reasons, and them and the things that come from their body are not here for us. So a bee, the honey is the bees, and it's part of their nature to make honey, and for me to interfere with that is not necessary for my survival, my health, my well-being, or my thriving. And so I just don't need to do it. I can have agave and I can have maple syrup, and it's just as good, and it's not harming an animal, right? So that's kind of the way to think about it. So so the almond milk, almonds get a bad rap because they're not so good for the environment, right? They're still better than dairy by a long shot. But again, I would try the soy. And I think people have a bad, I don't know if anybody else, but some people talk about like soy is no good, right? That it promotes estrogen growth, and this is a rumor. And actually the estrogen is found in dairy, which is a woman who just gave birth's breast milk, like that's where the growth hormones and the sex hormones are, in the breast milk. So the soy having estrogen, it has phytoestrogen, which is plant-based, and it's not harmful to us in the way that the estrogen from a mammal who gave birth is. So let me see. I saw a couple of other questions here. Pescatarian diet. So, I feel very strongly that fish need to stay in the oceans, because if fish are emptied out of the oceans, we don't have oxygen to breathe on the land. And right now, at the rate that we empty the oceans, about 500,000 fish were just killed in the 30 seconds that I just said that sentence. So we're on track right now to have empty oceans in 2048, which means we don't live on this earth. So my thought is that we leave the fish in the sea. And I think if you want to keep eating fish, I would ask you to watch Seaspiracy, or eating ourselves to extinction. I think it's eating our way to extinction, because we are in an alert zone and our choices matter. And so I feel like if you want fish, there's so many ways to mimic the flavor and the taste. Like Trader Joe's has a little seasoning of seaweed. So if you can figure out how to cook, like a mushroom, because a mushroom has a meaty texture, and you can figure out how to season that mushroom. I made like fried chicken the other day out of king oyster mushrooms, and it tasted like a fried chicken sandwich. I felt like I was like a kid at Wendy's. Like I even put vegan mayo on it, and it was the same sensory pleasure that I used to get from eating animal products, right? So I think it's about exploring how to find the same textures. I make scallops out of mushrooms all the time, and they're so delicious, and they taste exactly the same, and they feel exactly the same. And I just put them in vegan butter and garlic, and you would never even know the difference. I think it's important to try good vegan food, and to really have somebody who knows what they're doing show you, So there's some amazing people who are like into veganizing fish. So if you like to eat fish, I would say, look up whatever kind of fish you like and just put the vegan right before it. Let's say you like salmon, just put vegan salmon recipe in Google and see what happens. I mean, they make like carrot lox, and so like you just use carrots, and it's really like, I make bacon out of coconut because I know that bacon tastes good, but it's really just the seasoning. So I just take shreds of coconut, and it's like liquid smoke and smoked paprika and salt and oil and like garlic powder, and then you just, it's like crunchy and crispy, and I'll just eat it plain. and it has no cholesterol and it has no saturated fat and it didn't, cry when it died. So it's just, there's just no, it's like people talk about why are you vegan? And it's like, because I've been looking for a reason not to be for almost 3 years now. And everything that I find just points me in this direction again. So yeah, so I don't agree like that eating fish is okay, because if we eat fish once a week and there's 9 billion of us on this planet, that's what's happening. So we need the fish in the sea. And I think, again, like just to drive home, there's nothing that we want to taste that we can't veganize and still enjoy. And because of that reason, I think we should try to go there. I'd like to eat completely plant-based, but I'm juggling a lot of balls in my life when I get home from work with hungry kids in tow. Oh gosh, I get that. My kids are pastatarians, I joke, because I buy like the pasta that's made out of like vegetables, so I'm sneaking it in there, but they eat pasta all the time. 30 minutes before online classes to start cooking complicated meals from scratch. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of sheet pan meals, like just put it all on one pan. Like doing rice and beans and guacamole is good for the kids, and maybe just a side of fruits and stuff. So that you don't have to make it hard for yourself, or things that you can prep in advance or batch cook, like maybe like a big bowl of chili where you just put a whole bunch of, beans and corn and stuff in a crock pot in the morning when you have a busy afternoon. Soups are amazing. You could put a whole bunch of frozen stuff in and a whole bunch of, like veggie broth and chopped tomatoes and just put it on low and go. I'm big on one pot meals. So a lot of things, like I'll do a pasta bake where I'll just put like the pasta and the veggie, broth, and you buy your mushrooms cut up if it's going to be easier for you, and just pour them on there, and, just whatever vegetables you can add, and just, mix it together in the oven and go, whatever's easy for you. I think that's important. I definitely have those days where I don't want to cook. So I'll do things like that. I'll prepare things in advance. Like I'll make a batch of my veggie burgers and I'll freeze them so that when I have a busy day, we can just grab one, or we have Impossible burgers in the freezer for those days. I have the prepared Trader Joe's frozen things that I don't have to cook, because some days I just can't do that either, So yeah. So yeah, with the kids, it's hard with the kids, fruits, just give them options, put colors on their plate, and kids, kids, they're going to eat when they're hungry. I never tell them like, you have to finish this. I don't want to make issues around their food. I give them options, I give them colors, and the rest is up to them. And I'm like, this is what's for dinner, and that's it. I'm not a short order cook, and we're going to just, move on, because they'll eat when they need to.
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions in the chat.
Yeah. See. Oh, yeah. Thank you guys so much for the time and the space. Why is there so much negative comments on soy products? I think that's a really good question. I think like my personal opinion is that I think it's just, so that it stirs controversy in the consumer, and that you are torn between soy is bad for you and I need soy for calcium, and I'll just stop there and not go any further. I've always had dairy for calcium, so I'll just keep doing it. And I think there's information that supports any narrative. So is the dairy industry putting out information to say that soy is bad for you? Maybe, but they're not talking about which soy. I don't know why there's so much information. Personally, I think it's to keep the consumer confused. For example, are eggs healthy for you? Like, who can answer that question? It's actually illegal for the egg industry to say that they're healthy or nutritious. So it's, you know, I think it just stirs controversy. We go back and forth. 1 year eggs are good for you. 1 year you should only eat the egg whites. 1 year you should only eat, you know, both of them, and then it's going to change again. But the truth is, like, the information is out there that says the egg is not healthy for you, but people aren't reading for that, you know. And I think, you know, and nobody's looking to see, what does it mean? How do we get eggs? What is entailed in the egg industry? Because if people saw that, they would not want to buy that. And also, you know, I think we're greenwashed. We hear things like humane slaughter. We hear things like free range, organic, local. You know, and the truth of the matter is, it's all the same to the animal. It doesn't really matter. It's just it's something that we pay for to make ourselves feel better about our purchase. And it doesn't really make any difference to the suffering to the animal, the harm to the environment, or the negative health consequences that are going to eventually catch up to us from eating these foods that are just not good for us. Where do you buy my frozen Impossible burgers? I think that I always get, like, I get Impossible and Beyond confused. I think I have a thing of Impossible burgers from Costco, actually. I usually just buy whichever one's there. And honestly, there's another veggie burger at Costco that's not, it's like a spice, it's like a black bean burger. And I actually think it's better than the Impossible burgers. But they definitely have them at Whole Foods. I've definitely seen them at Costco too. Sandra, it looks like somebody's asking about how to get the recording of this session. Can you email to them?
So that will go
goes
on
to
our Heritage Center YouTube channel.
Perfect.
So if you receive our e-blast, which you likely do if you're on this call today, so that will be posted out there shortly. So give me a few days to get it out there.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. If anybody has any questions, you know, just shout them out. Otherwise, I just want to thank you for the time and space. Sorry, it looks like I'm crying. I just was coughing from from my water swallowing run. I'm really happy, I promise.
All right. Thank you so much, Lauren. We appreciate having you here today and sharing your knowledge with us. So it's always interesting to hear different perspectives about different diets and ways of living and things like that. So we appreciate you being with us. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And
thanks, Lauren. Wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.